Hello and welcome back to First Impressions. We're back live this week. So our last couple weeks we were pre-recorded, but welcome back. So this is a show where my co-host Dash Hooper and I evaluate a new album each week with a few simple ground rules. First, it must be an album we've never heard before. Second, we're only allowed to play it once. After that, we rate it using a variety of categories. Before we started, both of us picked 10 albums. We've changed our picks a little bit. So our original 10, we're not all on those. And it's from any time, any genre. Our seventh album we're going to be looking at is no title as of February 2024, 28,340 dead. It's a long title. We'll just call it no title as of now. And it's the 2024 album by Godspeed, You Black Emperor. So, how you doing today, Dash?
Oh, I'm good. This one, listen, this might be the very first instrumental album that I've ever reviewed. So,
oh, wow. Yeah, this one is a band I when we get to our background, I mean, yours is going to be pretty simple, kind of like mine with Gordon Lightfoot. I had no knowledge. I knew the name, but that's about as far as I went. But this one I have a lot of background with. So this is one of those bands that I go way back with. So there's kind of a picture of them. You don't really find band photographs of this band. They're not ones that go out there and, you know, have a YouTube or an Instagram. They try to keep themselves mysterious and let the music do the talking. And yeah, definitely
did that.
Yeah, they do that. The music speaks loud. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the history of the band. And like I said, they're ones that kind of keep themselves, they keep quiet in as far as talking about themselves. So it's really hard to know much about them, but I did some research, found out what I could find about them. And 1 second, I have to fix our thing. I realize it has a misspelling. So, all right. So little history of the band. So we talked about it with Chuck. It's another Canadian band. So Godspeed You Black Emperor is a Canadian post-rock band formed in 1994 in Montreal, Quebec. And they're known for sprawling orchestral compositions, politically charged themes, and experimental music. So just so we can clarify real quick, if you don't know what post-rock is defined as a subgenre of experimental rock that's characterized by an exploration of textures, timbres, and non-rock styles. And it's associated with unconventional song structures, extended instrumental passages, and minimal or no vocals. Another way that I've heard people describe it is post-rock is the music that you'll listen to when the world is ending, and kind of fits that theme really well. If you listen to this album, that sums it up perfectly. If you listen to any Godspeed album, it is definitely the music that you could listen to as the world is crumbling around you.
Yeah, like I literally pictured, like, if I was on deployments and doing certain things on my deployment, some of these songs would have fit in perfect with like the montage or the things that I was doing on deployment. So I totally get it. I know where they're coming from.
Yeah. So they were founded in 1994 by guitarist Ephraim Minuk, bassist Maru Peasant, and drummer Mike Moya. And their name came from a 1976 Japanese documentary about a biker gang that was called Godspeed You Black Emperor. So they got the name from a documentary about a Japanese biker gang. I've never seen the documentary, and doing my research, that's when I actually found out how they got their name. I never knew it, but just now something we know. So they used to be a loose collective, and they would just get revolving musicians and bring them in. They still kind of do that today in their live shows. If you see them, sometimes they'll bring in a horn section, sometimes they won't. You can't really tell how many musicians are on the stage, because when they play their live shows, they play in complete darkness. The only thing you really see is an 8mm film projector that projects images behind them. and band members just come on the stage, leave the stage. And at certain points, I counted the ones I could see, and I saw at one time like 14 people up on the stage. So
That's
various
awesome.
various guitars, multiple drummers, and it's a wild experience. I mean, when we get to our background, a Godspeed You Black Emperor live show is just something you don't want to miss. It is an experience in itself. It's not just the music, it's just the visuals, the audio, and just this complete darkness. It's a mesmerizing experience. It's one of those ones anytime they play, I make sure that I'm there to see them as many times as I possibly can. So, their first album they released in 1994, and it's never widely released. It was called wow, fucked on the Harry Amp Drooling, and I've
Yeah.
never heard it. They've never really released it besides in like little demo tapes at live shows. But their first proper release was F. It looks like a hashtag infinity, and it was released in 1997. That album I have heard. It's got that dark cinematic soundscape that you hear in all of their albums now, and then they have the rock and classical elements, and
Yeah.
also drone moments. And it only has, the same way this one does, spoken word interludes with no lyrics or anything like that. And this one got them signed by Constellation Records, which is where they're still signed today. And their follow-up, Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven, that came out in 2000. This is the one that kind of got them noticed by all of the underground publications like Pitchfork. I think even Rolling Stone noticed this one. And it's
Yeah.
a double album that's 4 songs long. So 4 20-minute songs making an 80-minute album that's a double, and it's amazing. I mean, I love that album. It's my go-to album when I'm doing writing because they're long, they're instrumental. I'm not going to get the lyrics to distract me, and some of the songs are just long sweeping epics. I mean, all of them are. When you have 4 songs, 4 sides, 1 song each, but they break them up, and you can hear when they play them live, they don't generally play them in their entirety. They'll take a section of those songs and really just, showcase a portion of it. So they did break up in 2003, but came back in 2010 just to perform some live shows. They were doing All Tomorrow's Parties, which is kind of a big indie festival that's curated by people who love that kind of music. And I think that one was curated by Matt Groening from The Simpsons. He's a
Simpsons.
big,
Yeah.
big fan of indie music. And I actually met him once, and that's what we talked about was indie music. So it's kind of funny that was your one thing instead of fanboying on him. Like, oh, hey, that All Tomorrow's Parties that you curated was spectacular. You got Godspeed You Black Emperor back again. And we sat there and shot the breeze about indie music because he was at Comic-Con, at San Diego Comic-Con, and he was doing a sketch for every single person he met. So he was signing a Simpsons poster and doing a sketch of whoever you wanted him to sketch. So I had him do a Mr. Burns for me because everyone else was asking for Homer and Marge and Bart. I'm like,
Yeah.
how about a Mr. Burns? So he did a Mr. Burns, and we talked about indie music. So pretty amazing. But after they came back for that All Tomorrow's Parties, they did record new music, and they've released 5 albums since they came back together. One of them being the one that we're looking at today, No Title, ... because we don't need to spend all the time talking about the name. Although when we talk about the album, we will talk about what the name means and why they actually picked that name. So they have a legacy. When they came back together, Pitchfork lost their minds. The indie public lost their minds because most of the people thought they'd never get a chance to see them play live, and now they had that opportunity. So they remain one of the most influential post-rock bands. Other post-rock bands would be like Explosions in the Sky. There's a band from Japan called Mono. Those are some of the bigger ones, but Godspeed You Black Emperor's the biggest name in that genre. And they have artistry and activism with no lyrics. You have the activism comes through the spoken word segments, and then if you see them live, the different images that they put on those screens. So yeah, little history of the band right there. A lot to it, but yeah, they've been around forever. You can't find any interviews with them. Like I said, they pretty much keep to themselves and let the music do those talking. So the newest album, their albums, they get, some are very highly reviewed, some get less high reviews. This one did fairly well in reviews. So on Metacritic, it was a 79, and all of the reviews were very positive. There was one negative review that kind of brought that score down, but most of the scores were giving them 4 stars and 80 out of 100. So strong reviews, people saying, okay, it's a good return to form for the band, and that this one has more optimism than some of their other releases, which I hear it in some spots. I don't hear it in others. When I was reading about the optimism, I'm like, okay, some of this stuff's bleak. I mean, it's just a bleak listen, but yeah, there are songs that bring more of that optimism in there. So yeah, it was, yeah, hold up real quick. I'm going to pull up the Metacritic so we can see that and see where their reviews were. So
yeah, most of the ones I looked at were very favorable. So
yeah, so 79 out of 100 on Metacritic, 86 from Beats Per Minute, and Dusted Magazine 80, Mojo 80, Observer UK 80, Bold, Brave, and Brilliant, they say. Quick little thing. Uncut 80, All Music 80, The Skinny 80, Pitchfork 78. You gotta love their weird reviews. Like, okay, we're gonna give you a 7.8, and they didn't name it as best new music, but then the critic who reviewed it, after listening to it more than his first listen when he wrote the review, ended up going back and putting it as one of the top albums of the year, because he's like, just it kind of grows on you and it becomes, something that you just can't get rid of. So Classic Rock Magazine gave it a 70. It was The Wire and Slant Magazine that gave it the lower reviews that kind of brought that 79 where it's at. But overall, very positive reviews for this album. And as someone who's listened to all of their work, I can say that, yeah, it definitely hits in that higher range. There's a few that I would even rate lower myself, but this one, I feel like the reviews are pretty fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. So now this one should be nice and easy for you. What's your background with this band?
This is my background. You telling me about it. You and when we were with Chuck. So I was excited because you talked about, it being all instrumental. So that made me look forward to it. Now, don't get me wrong. I've listened to tons of instrumental music before, but ever just sitting down and actually talking a review, this will be the first time. And I tell you guys, if you're out there and you need a 1,000-word essay, just write the title of this album about 10 times and you are good.
You're finished. You're
finished.
Done.
No, I'm glad you introduced me to this. That's what I will say on my background of this. I'm brand new. I didn't even know this was a genre.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. So I'm looking forward to listening to more, especially after listening to this one. So
yeah,
and from other bands.
So I know you're doing your 1,000 albums. I can give you a good chunk of solid post-rock albums that you can listen to. And for my background, I was introduced to this band in 1999. One of my friends saw them play in Phoenix, and he was just blown away. He's like, I just saw this band and they blew my mind because they play in pitch black. You don't see who's up there on the stage, and they just have this 8mm projector that's throwing these crazy images. You'll see images from static to images of war to images of just kind of a decaying animal to images of just driving through a field. I mean, it's just constantly moving, and there's points in time when the music is so low you can hear the 8mm projector chugging in the background. And it's like, all right, that's a flashback to, you know, the days in school when you get all excited when the 8mm projector would roll in and you get to watch a movie on that. So it's kind of, you don't see those much anymore, and they still incorporate those into their shows. And like I said, at one point I counted 14 musicians on the stage, so it goes up and down and they just kind of come and go. No one stays up there besides the core that you see right here. Those are the ones that are always on there. But like I said, sometimes a horn will come, sometimes a horn section will come on, sometimes more strings. And yeah, it's just wild to watch, seeing as much as you can when it's in dark. And a lot of the venues now don't let them do the pitch black thing that they used to do. So you get a little bit of lights on the stage. That's how you can get even a picture like this, where you can see there's some people there, but there's no stage lights lighting them up and letting you see, you know, someone being showcased or anything like that. So he introduced them to me, and I finally got a chance to see them and was just completely blown away by the live show. So now I've seen them multiple times. I use them as one of my primary writing sources. When I'm writing, I use their music because it's just instrumental. And if I'm writing a bleak scene, they have the perfect soundtrack for that. And they did get used. One of the things that they did get used in was in 28 Days Later. They used their song as the opening song when everything was falling apart. So most people, if you hear it, you'll be like, okay, now if you watch the movie again, you'd hear the song and you'll know what the Godspeed sound is. And they get used in that particular scene. So that's the one place where you might have seen them, even though you didn't know you've seen them, or heard them, I should say.
That makes me now. Yep.
So now if you go back, you can listen in for it and you'll know, okay, yeah, now I do recognize that. So that's one place that most people do actually know them, even though that you'd have to watch the end credits to realize it wasn't just something that was done by the composer of the movie. And yeah, I've said this all along. If my book ever does get adapted into a film, I want them to write the score for it, because I could just imagine a beautiful score if they did those kind of things. Now they barely license their songs out for movies, so good luck. But hey, dare to dream. That's all I can do. So yeah, there's someone. Yeah, I listened to them. I even thanked them in the first issue of my comic, actually the second issue, when I did a thank you section. They were thanked in that because I listened to that. There was one show that I have a recording of where they played this small church in Los Angeles, and I played that recording over and over through the writing of issue 1 of Immortal Era. So yeah, they even have a thank you in issue 2. So yeah, I've been listening to them for a long time, like I said, since 99 when I was introduced to them. So I have a longer background with them, and yeah, like I said, they're definitely one that you want to see if you get a chance. So before we go into our thoughts, the title of the album. So the long title that we refer to as, the no title ellipse, but no title as of 13 February 2024, 28,340 dead. On the album's title references the reported death toll of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip during the Israel-Hamas conflict. So that was how many had died as of the release of the album. Unfortunately, the numbers have grown, but that's where they came up with that title. And it's finding a way to be a political band, even though you have no politics or no lyrics. Rage Against the Machine, they scream their political views right out loud for all to hear. Or a band like Godspeed You Black Emperor, they don't have a way to scream it out, but a title like that lets you know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about this. What are your overall thoughts with this album?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the movie thing, because that was my first overall impression. Is like I'm just picturing a movie in my head when I'm listening to this album. You're just, I mean, you could go from medieval a night battle to a modern day battlefield, I mean, all of this music fits in a certain way, even though maybe the titles may not reflect
Yeah.
that, but the music does. You know, I mean, I equate it to like when I'm sitting there watching Apocalypse Now,
Mhm.
and the Ride of the Valkyries
Yeah.
comes on, and you know, I'm getting that vibe as soon as
Mhm.
these songs kick in. So I was like, man. And then you know, like you said, you brought it up. It was 28 days later. That's pretty cool. I just enjoyed listening to it all, and you're
Yeah.
hearing just the music. And again, like I said, I've listened to a lot of instrumentals, but uh, when I was in school, we did a lot of it in one of my classes. We were
Mhm.
to listen to instrumentals and then write our thoughts in
Mhm.
one of my writing classes. We'd write our thoughts about what the music brought. And I think that's perfect way to do it. And just like you talked about, that's why I write like you write with instrumentals.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just was sitting there getting lost, and you're just 1 minute you're feeling like you're ready to charge into battle, and the next minute you're like
Mhm.
something bad has happened,
Yeah.
something has not turned out, and I love that through the entire like you know we all the other albums we've listened to, it's pretty much one steady, you know, like he broke her heart, and
Mhm.
she's mad at him the rest of the way through it. Where with this
Yeah.
one, you're charging into battle, and somebody got hurt, and then they make an overall recovery, and they're charging again. That's what I like about the ebb and flow
Mhm.
of the instrumental. And so overall, I just loved it. I was just um, I've listened to it since my first. Now I've listened to it 3 more times
Yeah.
because you're just it's that kind of album that you could be like, yeah, this is the mood I'm feeling. This is the
Yeah.
actual mood I'm feeling. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
my first impressions is just fantastic album.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I'm coming in with a huge bias. I am a gigantic fan of this band. So it was a surprise to me that I hadn't heard this album. I didn't know they released it until I'm looking at the end of the year best of list. I'm like, holy crap, I just missed a Godspeed album. Perfect. We can throw it on our show and, introduce you to them, and me getting to listen to one and talk and think about those first impressions. So for me, I just thought it's another amazing release from this band. I mean, and they not all of their releases are perfect. They all have a song or two that are just mind-numbingly good, but this album I think works as an overall one, and I think that's why it got higher Metacritic than some of their albums did. But I think
Right.
it's got that expansive cinematic sound, and the band is just firing on all cylinders. It takes the listeners on a deep emotional journey with no lyrics at all. So, like you said, you can imagine different things. You are the 8mm that's playing in your head, and you're seeing these images and things like that. So, um,
That's a good good way to look at it. Absolutely.
so for me, I think of it like this. It's like it almost feels like waves in the ocean. Like it's a building huge wave, it crashes and then it starts to build again. So it just builds and crashes and builds again. And I also felt like this is the first album we've played that's truly a headphone album, where you
Yeah.
need to play it with headphones because you're going to pick up on things that you would miss the first time. So I've played it through the speakers, I played it through the headphones, and I played it on a run. That's not the ultimate way to listen to it because you miss all the nuances and you're hearing the
Yeah.
cars around you. So I found the great way to listen to it through the headphones, the not so great way on a run on a busy
Yeah.
street. So that
This
that
th-
way you lose all the subtle nuance and get nothing from it.
this is a dark room. Like you said, if they play in the dark, you might as well listen. This is a dark room. Put the headphones on. Close your
Mm-hmm.
eyes, because you're the way you can, like you said, the way you can pick up on certain nuances. Like on the second time through, there were things that I obviously missed through the first time through
Mm-hmm.
of the way the instruments again, where they pick up in the emotion. Like this is a song where you pick up emotions without lyrics. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that. I love that you can, you know, tell when somebody's sad or angry or
Yeah.
in the song. So yeah,
Yeah, you can really get that feeling without having to hear a word. But standout lyrics. I was going to drop this one, but since they have the spoken word interlude, I found the translation of it. So I'm just going to share
Okay.
the translation instead of trying to say it in Spanish. Forget it. I would fail and I don't need to do that. So let me find that here. All right, so here, the raindrops cast in lead. It's the only words muttered on the entire album. Everything else is purely instrumental. Godspeed, You Black Emperor albums, they have ones where there's, you know, just interludes that are someone talking and reminiscing, someone talking about, oh, what was one of the ones, like someone's talking about Coney Island and how much he loved it and how it's fallen apart and it's not the same anymore. And then their music kind of sweeps over that and you get the same feeling that the man's talking about in the album. So this one, Raindrops Cast in Lead, and here's what the translation of that is. So raindrops cast in lead, our side lit up, then put out and buried and extinguished underneath the perfect sun, underneath the body falling from the sky. They were martyrs falling, because on our side, they were martyrs since before we were even born. The women who tried and were killed for trying, the women who died young, furious, or old, and never saw the sunrise, innocents and children, and the tiny bodies that laughed and will sleep forever and never saw the beauty of the sunrise. So you hear these lyrics, and oh my gosh, it's giving us ads. We don't need that. But you hear the lyrics, and it just, they're even more powerful when you get them translated, and you see it's kind of up until that point, the song had this very kind of dark overtone to it, and the song kind of builds early for a Godspeed song. It still does, it still takes about 2 minutes to build, but it builds and then it kind of comes back down for the musical interlude and then builds back up. And it's almost like they're bringing some positivity after these dark lyrics. Like, okay, as hopeless as this feels, we can still dig and find hope in the world. So yeah, it's the only lyrics, but when I translated them, I'm like, okay, even though it's not a lyrical album, it's a good poem. I'm assuming that they found from someone. It's credits who wrote the poem or wrote and said that in the album, but unfortunately I forgot to write that down. But standout lyrics being the only lyrics, I'll make sure that I put those ones in. So now we can talk about, what were your favorite tracks on this one?
I mean, right from the get-go, it was I love the sun as a whole. Or the sun as a whole, sun is vapors. And then I really like that one. Raindrops cast in lead, I really liked. And then my other one is the pale spectator takes photographs.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know. I can't honestly speak to them being, if that's what they're really saying. You know, I don't know if I felt like raindrops. I can definitely feel like, you know, I can say there was, you know, I could feel like there was probably raindrops in there, but that was the ones that were just very, I mean, like I could just sit there and I'm just in it. And you, in that first, I mean, again, we talk about this every time we do this show, and I'm every time we do this show, I will continue to talk about it. The minute it opens up, you've got to feel it, and you're feeling it from. I mean, you're just. I mean, it's boom, and then you're right there, and it's not like it's not like you're listening. You're waiting because I knew this was instrumental, so it's not like I'm waiting for words. I'm waiting for that emotional lyric or that emotional stanza to come in. Well, not stanza, but part of the song to come in.
Yeah.
And it does, and you're just there, and you're just like, all right, I'm good. Whoa.
Yeah.
And Raindrops does that. And
yeah,
so
that one's strong.
Yeah, that one's a strong one where you're just like, and then again, you get the spoken word, but it's definitely a backseat. I like what they wrote and I like what you translated there, but it definitely takes that spoken word, while it means something, takes a backseat for this song to me still, because of the powerful of the music and you know, it's fantastic. Those are my three Now I enjoyed every one of the songs,
Yeah.
but those three were definitely the ones where I had no problem on a second, third, fourth listen repeating again because I was feeling it.
Yeah, so better than Jethro Tull. I mean, that's a matter of opinion. This
That's
is
a
this
matter
is
of
one of my
opinion.
favorite bands, so I'm going to be a biased one in this. And I know Dash, you grew up with your brother loving Jethro Tull, so it's I won't say better or worse. I'll say it's a completely different experience.
Yes, it's
You
a
don't
different experience.
experience Godspeed You Black Emperor the same way you experience really any band. I mean, they
Yeah.
are an experience of their own, and like I said, you got to go see the live show, then you truly have experienced Godspeed You Black Emperor, because it's mind melting, and you always get to pick your brains off the ceiling when you're done with one of their shows. So
I
I'm
love. See, I love.
seeing them in March. I'm ready.
Yeah, I love the flute in Jethro Tull. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's about the only comparable parts, but the flute parts in his songs take me to a different place, to where this album took me to a totally completely different place. Like,
Yeah.
again, when I listen to Jethro Tull, I don't see myself doing the things that I did on Deployment. Where with this, I definitely could, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
it's a different experience. It's like saying, okay, better than Stevie Wonder? No, different. You know, that's the beauty of music. You can experience different musics in completely different ways, and you're still gonna have feelings, and good, bad, or otherwise. But yeah, just better, worse. I mean, I'm the wrong one to ask. You're talking one of my top 5 bands right here, and how they, like I said, how they snuck a release without me noticing. Well, I guess their whole not doing press thing kind of backfired on them, because I would have been being instant buy on that one. And kind of like The Cure, I went to record stores around me and they didn't have it, so I had to do the Amazon thing. I'd always rather throw the money at a local record store, but if you don't have it, I'm stuck giving Bezos more billions. But oh well. So yeah, for me, my first, I had, it was a hard time narrowing it down, because it's kind of like, all right, I love the album as an entire piece, but I love Babies in a Thundercloud. It kind of starts with, you hear thunder roaring, but it could be gunshots. You don't really know. And the initial guitars sound like an oncoming train. And then these layered guitars just build and build, and then finally merge with the strings and the drums, and the song just goes bigger and bigger, and then drops and builds again. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's about a 13-minute track, so it just moves, but it doesn't feel its length. You don't look at your watch while you're listening to this song, and especially if I'm writing, I'm just going to really feel it and flow, and that 13 minutes is going to feel like a heartbeat. And that's the thing. Some 13-minute songs truly feel their length, and you're like, okay, this song is definitely wearing out its welcome. There's one on the new Decemberist album. I'm a huge Decemberist fan, but this one, it feels its length, and it's like you could have trimmed a good 5 minutes off that song and improved it exponentially, where these ones, even though they're 13-minute songs, I don't feel 5 minutes that could have been chopped off, because it's just almost like classical music. It's movements. It's an entire piece that builds, and removing any of it is going to compromise the vision of the artist. Where with the Decemberist one, I'm like, all right, this is just getting pretentious and it's annoying me. And it becomes like, I want to skip 5 minutes of this song and narrow it down. Kind of like with the Stevie Wonder, we had talked about, I forget the song, but it could have dealt with some editing. The one with, I think it was Black Man. And when the kids start talking and the teacher starts, the talk and repeat from the teacher and the students, that could have done with some trimming. At that point, I kind of lost the flow of the song. These songs don't do that, because they follow more a classical structure. So
you'll lose the story. You'll lose the story if you cut anything out of these songs. You lose the story they're telling you.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my first one. My second one, it's kind of a cheat, because I look at it, I bought the vinyl, and the side C of the vinyl has the final 3 songs of the album. and they feel like one coherent piece to me. They didn't feel like separate songs. In fact, I didn't even know when track 4, The Broken Spires at Dead Capital, had ended and Pale Spectator had begun.
Yeah.
So it felt like a seamless track, and the optimism that kind of closed out side B, it felt like it was all gone when this first started. So you had these bent notes, you had these sorrowful strings, and these pounding drums that are just going in there. And it just has this overall just bleakness to it. And then the song built, like, it then kind of moves into the Pale Spectator. As I said, I didn't know that it had even moved to a new track, because when you're playing the album, there's no pause between tracks. It's just like, we're going to keep moving this flow along. And it almost has this insect sound, this buzzing insects. So I'm just seeing these buzzing insects around a decaying world. And it got darker and more sweltering as it fed into Gray Rubble. And Gray Rubble, it to me felt like a merry-go-round, what you would hear on a merry-go-round if you're playing Silent Hill. Like, that's like the merry-go-round track from a horror movie.
Yeah,
so if you're playing Silent Hill and you walking up to a merry-go-round, that's what I'm gonna hear.
You're waiting for Pennywise to join you. Trust me.
Yeah, it's just dark, but then it's after the kind of twisted merry-go-round sequence ends, it drops a little quieter and actually builds up a little more hopeful sound by the end. But those 3 songs, as a lot of the critics are saying, okay, it has this more positive optimism. I'm like, those 3 songs, like you said, I'm waiting for Pennywise. I'm seeing this merry-go-round of crumbling zombie horses, and it's just dark, but I love it. I mean, I'm not complaining a little bit about that. But when he's like, oh, it has a more positive vibe, I mean, I guess you could say that because some of their albums are just like swelteringly bleak. But again, I like that. And my story that I'm writing isn't exactly, happy times. So it works for what I need to accomplish. If I'm trying to write a happy, great love story, I'm going to probably skip Godspeed You Black Emperor for my background. I don't think it's going to feed, great happy stories. But when you're trying to write a post-apocalyptic story in a dark world, this is your band right here.
Yeah, this is Terminator Judgment Day all over it.
Yeah, and when people kind of describe them as the sound that you would hear when the world is ending, it fits the bill very well. And when I'm writing about a world that's ending, this is who I want to bring in. But one thing that, talking about their live shows, I talk about it a lot, as the images always start off as just static and then eventually build up. And by the end of the show, it always goes into this, just hope. So the static disappears, and then as all these crazy images, you've just had 2 hours of this wild barrage of images, and they always close out with the words hope kind of building through the static. So there's always a hopefulness to their music. Even if it's bleak, they still believe that good can happen. So they'll always end it with one of their more upbeat songs. Upbeat is a subjective category for Godspeed You Black Emperor. Like, more upbeat where it's not like ringing death bells and buzzing flies. So yeah, you have like through one of the songs, you hear these bells ringing, and it's just, like almost like a recess bell, but clanging through all this chaos. So yeah, hopefulness. Yeah, it's definitely different than what you're going to find in some of the other albums we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, for me, it works. Like I said, we're dealing with one of my favorite bands, so I have bias just knowing what they are capable of, and this album definitely ranks high in their catalog, where some of the last couple albums have moments, have songs, but the overall weren't as strong. I think this one, from start to finish, is just a strong, coherent piece.
Yeah, I agree.
And you could remove all the track breaks and just play it as one track, and it would feel like a perfect flow. And that's actually when I when I listen to that live show, it's not tracked, and that's exactly how I want it. Because in their live shows, they don't stop for audience applause. They don't, okay, we finished this song, let's wait for the applause, take our bows. Like, nope, it's just one seamless track, one seamless moment that just goes on. And then when you start seeing Hope and then it fades back into the static, you know the show's over. No encore, don't ask for it. They're not coming back on the stage. They all will walk off one by one and kind of left with the distorted guitar feedback from one of the members who left it sitting on the stage. And then they're gone. The lights come back on and you stumble out because you just got your mind blown by a band. So yes, that's my favorite thing. So yes, like I said, I'm ready. Got tickets for them later this year, so
That's
I'm
awesome.
pumped for that.
Yeah, you're just, and I'm telling you, it's one long story. I feel like it's one long story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, if you were to, if this, as you said, if there were no track cuts where they go to the next one, if this was a continuous one, I'm telling you, it's just one long story of what's going on with them, and it's up to interpretation, obviously.
Yeah.
To whoever listens to it. Like, for me, again, it could be just one long battle scene from a movie, or to somebody else, like you said, it could be a horror movie. It's just, it's one long story, and that's what I loved about it. And I think that I think lots of other people should do this more.
Yeah, it's well worth your time. But yeah, bands, I mean, you can get like Nine Inch Nails, they'll do instrumental albums. And if you ever want to have some good writing material, it's The Ghosts. I think there's like 8 volumes of it, and it's some great instrumental stuff. Also very dark in its tones, but when you're dealing with Trent Reznor, you kind of know to expect that as well. And it's funny because Trent Reznor actually brought Godspeed You Black Emperor on tour with him, I think probably like 2008 or so. So they were the opening band, and I can't say the Nine Inch Nails crowd were feeling them, because it's like I don't think they knew quite what they were getting. And when you get,
it's totally different. Yeah,
you get
totally
people that are going just for the radio songs, they're not going to really appreciate it. But you had people that you could tell were really feeling it and just were blown away by it. So I'm sure they gained some new fans through that, but they also had, just people chatting through the whole thing, kind of like, all right, why is this band wasting my time? I just want to mosh to Head Like a Hole and let's get on with this. So they're not really there they don't want to even hear the deep cuts of Nine Inch Nails. They're like, I just want to bash somebody tonight, and this music is unbashable. So what the hell's going on? Yeah, actually on that tour, all of the openers he picked were all different post-rock bands. So
that's cool though.
It was a great tour. He had Godspeed You Black Emperor. He had Explosions in the Sky. I think he had I'm trying to remember who else. I saw them a couple times on the tour. So I saw the Godspeed and I saw Explosions in the Sky, and neither one was really winning the crowd over, but Trent Reznor brought them because he loves them. So at least I'm sure they converted some people in that crowd, even, not the ones looking for, and that one was in Vegas. I'm like, oh, Vegas crowds are hard to win anyway, because they're literally just, they want to get wasted and scream the lyrics to the radio songs and nothing much more. So yeah,
I can agree to that.
So we'll come to this one. Are there any tracks you'd skip on this album?
Absolutely not. No, listen, this is probably the first album that we've done where I've gone back and listened to it more and more and more, and more than one time, or more than 2 times actually, because you just feel it. It's a like I said, it's not, again, you're not looking at a whole lot of sunshines and rainbows and butterflies. No. This is a deep emotion, and at times bleak emotion, but not that I'm feeling bleak or anything, but you're feeling it because you're wanting to. I want to know what they're going through.
Yeah.
What was the reason behind why they drafted and created the song? So there's definitely not one I would skip. And again, like you said, I would rather just listen to. I wish there was a way I could just cut out all the the track breaks and just go
Yeah.
through it, almost 75 or 70 minutes. I think it was close to something like
Hmm.
that. 70 minutes of straight music would be phenomenal. Just throw the
Yeah.
headphones on, sit in a dark room, or sit in a very, if you're writing, just sit in a nice, cozy area, dark area where you can still see the type,
Hmm.
and go at it, because that's the type of album this is. So no skips
Yeah.
for me.
It's so funny. I said the same thing in my notes. Like, this album begs to be played in a dark room. And I was playing it. It was actually dark outside. And I just like, you know what? I'm taking the lights down because this one just deserves for me to just sit on the couch and absorb it. And I mean, it sounds cliche to say this, but it literally had me shaking when it was over. I
Yeah.
was like, that was just an experience. It was just a powerful emotional experience. And like I said in the beginning, without the single use of lyrics, where it's like, all right, a lot of bands move you with their lyrics, and that's great. When we kind of a precursor to what we're going to be talking about next week, we're going to be looking at someone who definitely uses her lyrics to tell the story. Not,
Yep.
she's not writing a Godspeed You Black Emperor album, but that's kind of when we get into our
Yeah.
what's coming up next. But yeah, I think we have an easy one for this one. Are we going to revisit this one or send it to the used bin? I think we've already both revisited it, so it's kind of we've already said where we stand on this one.
Listen, for me, this is like listening to John Williams. Listen, when you're listening to Star Wars interludes and Star
Mm-hmm.
Wars, this is comparative to that. As far as, I'm not seeing Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, but I'm feeling the music like I feel when I'm listening to Superman soundtrack,
Yeah.
or Star Wars soundtrack. You're in those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm in the scenes. I don't, again, it may be different for everybody, but for me, I'm in those scenes. I'm in that big battle, and I'm in that where one point the battle is going downhill, and then it turns around, and you're regrouping and recharging, and so that for me is definitely a revisit, and it's one that again, if you're a writer, creator, artist, I mean, writer, artist, painter, this is the album you need to revisit over and over again.
Oh yeah.
100%.
And
100%.
it hit. I was at the library doing some writing on Tuesday, and yeah, this was the album that was playing. I let it play multiple times because it just, like you said, it's perfect for that. And you're going to create whatever imagery you want. We know that a lot of this album has to do with what's going on in Gaza, what's going on with those wars over there. They're affected by them because the entire band is Jewish, and they're going to be affected by that even more because they're watching their homeland being decimated by war, and that you can feel that they are upset about things in certain parts of this album. You can feel the upset even though they don't need to say it. Like I said,
Yeah.
when it's Rage Against the Machine, Zach De La Rocha, we hear his upset because he's screaming it at the top of his lungs, and he's letting us know, and they're letting us know in just the same way without screaming it at the top of their lungs, but the emotions are there one way or the other. So yeah, it's
definitely
the easiest one that for a revisit. It's kind of, for most of these, we've been pretty easygoing. Not many have made it to the used bin besides my god awful copy of Gordon Lightfoot that skips so much. Like, I got it from the used bin and it needs to go right back there because, oh man, I want to experience the album on vinyl, not have to play it through Spotify. But that one was just so bad that that was the only true used bin one where it's just like, oh gosh, bad copy of an album. And you just never know. You don't, those little teeny scratches can ruin your experience. But
yeah,
for this one, yeah, I don't know. Did you get the vinyl on this one?
I did not yet.
Okay.
But I did. I do know that there's other tracks.
Yeah,
That I got.
There's one track on the vinyl that's no title for it. It's it kind of revisits the last track. And if there were a skip, not that I would skip any of them, that would be the one, because it's kind of the flow of the album so perfect that adding that, I guess, kind of revisiting that after the album's finished, it feels kind of like a tack on, which it is. And it's great that they gave people who bought the vinyl a 13-minute song that you can't get anywhere else. It's not streaming. It's not available anywhere but on that album. But it's the flow of the album so perfect that when it ends at its natural ending, you're completely satisfied. And it's not even that it's a bad song, but the flow of the album is so perfect. But you got to give them props for giving people who bought the physical media something that you don't have otherwise. And you don't get it on the CD because there's not enough time on a CD to fit that on there, because it's already, like you said, peaking at about 70 minutes. So you can't get another 13-minute track and fit it on the CD. So it's a vinyl only thing, because that's one thing the band has come out and said when the few times that you can see anything from this band, they have said that their preferred method of listening to theirs is on vinyl. And that's why on the vinyl, those last 3 tracks have no pauses between. So one ended, I didn't even know the next one had begun. I had to look on the Spotify and like, wait, that's only 3 minutes. So I'm actually like 2 minutes deep into the next song, and I hadn't even realized that.
That's the only one. If there's a negative for me, that's the only negative on that very short one. And then you're like, boop, boop. So that's the only negative I would have.
Yeah, and see, with the vinyl, it's seamless, so you can play it, and it plays, that whole side plays like one continuous track. So until I realized, oh wow, it's broken up, I had to actually go into Spotify to see where the next track began, because some of my notes were talking as if it were the first song on there, and realizing that, okay, that's actually the third song, because the first one on that is very short. I think it's only, it's like 3:34, followed by The Pale Spectator. So Broken Spires at Dead Capital is 3:34. And I didn't realize that Pale Spectator had even started, and it was like 4 minutes into it, an 11-minute track. I was like, oh, wow, I got to revise that and kind of draw some different arrows to my notes. And then Gray Rubble, Green Shoots just kind of moves right into it as well. So it just feels very seamless, and that is the best way to experience those 3 songs. And I'm really hoping that when I see them live, that they play them as one piece, because they just work perfectly as one continuous track.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so now let's talk about next week. Next week, our tone changes entirely. It is our first request that we're taking. We have a few other requests that we'll get to, but we have our schedule set all the way through February. So next week we will be looking at Taylor Swift Midnights. I guarantee a different experience for both of us than the Godspeed You Black Emperor experience. But then again, I think any album that we listen to is a different experience than this one. It's its own animal. Instrumental is a whole different thing.
I can't promise any of you Swifties anything. Yeah. If you're a Swiftie and you're watching, I can't promise you I'm going to like this album at all. I can't promise you that.
We go in with we try to go in with an unbiased opinion of something. That's all we can promise. But since she's just a juggernaut of pop culture, it's hard to go in unbiased. It's kind of like you want to get picked to be a juror on the OJ trial. All right, there's too much baggage there, and we already have a lot of baggage because Dash runs his NFL show. So if you're studying the NFL, Taylor Swift is right there in that, because the Chiefs are kind of the darlings of the NFL right now. They're what the Patriots were a few years ago before Brady left, and now it's like all we hear about is that. And if you hear about the Chiefs, you're going to hear about Taylor Swift. And I'm looking and I'm seeing Travis Kelce cereal at the grocery store. I'm like, man, they are just pounding our heads with this. So we can't come in unbiased. We already have we've already kind of given some spoilers to our background of Taylor Swift, because you can't not know anything about this. But I'm going to listen to this album as unbiased as possible. I'm going to try to appreciate her lyrics, because I know people talk about her lyrics as being very important part of her music. So I'm going to listen to the lyrics. I'm going to pay attention after a week of not listening to lyrics, which sometimes makes it harder because you're like, I just have to talk about the vibes that I'm getting from this. It's kind of all vibes, all feeling, because the lyrics can't bail you out. Like, okay, I just love this lyric or this chorus or this bridge. It's like, nope. What are you feeling about the music itself? So we will come in as unbiased as possible. If you're a Swiftie and we don't love it, we apologize in advance. So don't come after us.
Yeah, my good friend who does all my reading shows with me, my good friend Amber is the resident Taylor Swift expert. She will be watching. Mm-hmm. She's the one that requested this, by the way.
All right. So she needs to tune in, drop the comments, tell us why we're wrong, or if we're right, tell us why we're right. I always tell you, you can tell me at any time why you think I'm wrong. And I had some people tell me I was wrong about Gordon Lightfoot. Someone's like, no, actually, that song that you said is the worst. That's my favorite song on the album. And that's great.
Oh, I get that all the time.
It's a god-awful Christmas song, and I stand by my feelings on it. And next year's Christmas song takedown, it will make the list. Yeah. But we have 2 songs that'll make the list. So we didn't know them beforehand, but we got a really terrible Jethro Tull Christmas song, and we got the Gordon Lightfoot, 2 depressing, horrible Christmas songs to be placed in the category of Christmas shoes if you want to be depressed on Christmas. And it's like, come on, we can be depressed all year long. Let us at least feel happiness on Christmas.
Yeah, this album is a payback for me making her read Game of Thrones. So
there you go.
I'm getting my payback.
It's her payback, and why I'm lumped into this payback, I don't know, but I will take the beating with you because
if I'm going down, I'm going down. I want to go down with somebody else. So
this ship's gonna sink, and we'll both stand on it as it's going down. But yes, next week. Don't miss it. Now she's got to tune in. I think it's a prerequisite that she watches and just comments all the reasons why we're wrong and how we got all of it wrong. And she needs to go, if she likes Taylor Swift, she needs to go find Soccer Mommy and try to get her into that because she would enjoy that.
She will definitely tell us why we're wrong.
That's beautiful. I'm ready.
That's awesome. No, that's what we want. That's exactly what we want. Yep, that's exactly what we want. No, I just don't want to get canceled. I just don't want our show to get canceled. We're doing really good. We're picking up steam on First Impressions. You guys keep watching away. Keep giving us some love out there because Ed's doing a great job with the show. I love every minute of it, and we're picking up steam with this. And so I do. Yeah, hope there it is.
We don't hate this next album. So there you go. We're gonna end like Godspeed ends all their shows with a little ray of hope that maybe Taylor Swift will win over 2 50-something-year-olds. We're going to be the new Swifties standing at the concert, holding the sign without our children. We're just going to be like, no. I'm going to be there alone. I'll be the only 50-year-old guy that's not a chaperone for a parent. So much like the Billie Eilish show I took my daughter to, I was standing in the back with all the dads watching their kids have a great time. And I mean, she's a great performer. I take nothing away from that. Maybe we can look at a Billie Eilish album one day. But yeah, it's funny because I'm sure if I were at a Taylor Swift show, I would be standing in the back with the old guys and the older women watching their children have a great time. So next week, will we have a great time with Taylor Swift? We only have hope. All right.
And throw your requests in the comments for Ed or me.
Yeah.
Or
drop your requests in there. We will get to them. This one, we did have a request for an instrumental album. So here we are, our first instrumental album. Thank you for the request. And we'll see you same time, same place next week with Taylor Swift. It's on.
Good night.